Wayne Hemingway, I think a foremost design thinker in the UK for the last 20 years. I was impressed. Wayne's going to talk a lot about his work, kind of city making, but also I think with a nod to Walsall and how we're going to make our festivals and our growth here, kind of looking at a creativity and how we can make it sustainable. We talked about that. And sustainable for me is we talked about economic sustainability and how can we build in resilience to what we do. I know I read stuff around Blackburn is Open, which is a national festival of making, a festival of thrift in Tees Valley, and the second Sunday, which is a modern maker market in Andover. So there's a whole load of UK examples which Wayne can share with us. So over to you, Wayne. Thank you for today.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. Sunday afternoon. I haven't done one of these for a long time. I'm normally playing with the grandkids, but I did that this morning, so I got that out of the way. HemingwayDesign, we've been going for since 1981, so 44 years. We started selling second-hand clothes, me and my wife, on Camden Market. I was in a band at the time. We'd never planned anything to do with being designers. We wouldn't have had a clue that there was a concept of a career in design. Gerardine had left school at 15, but she made clothes, and I made music, and we didn't. It was just something we did because we were young, and night clubbing and dancing and fashion was the major thing in our life, like it should be. It probably should still. It's still probably one of the major. Well, it definitely is one of the major things in my life still, and we kind of fell into it. And cut a long story short, we created this company called Red or Dead, which some of you are old enough. There's a few of you old enough to remember in here, which probably became certainly the biggest brand in the UK at the time, the biggest street style fashion brand. We won Designer of the Year for 3 years on a row. Alexander McQueen had his first job with us. Lots of designers started with us and then went on. But we sold it when we were in our 30s for a number of reasons. One, we wanted to do other things. Two, we had 4 kids and wanted just a different lifestyle. Fashion industry is... we had 23 shops around the world, from Tokyo to New York to Vancouver. We even had one in Reykjavik. And obviously, what nearest one to here was Birmingham. Every city in the UK had a Red or Dead. Every major city. But it was debilitating. We were based in London, but having to just never be at home. That's the nature of, and you're on a tread. I can't imagine what it's like now when they have to do 8 collections a year. It was bad enough doing 4 collections a year, but more than 8 now, if you're in the dreaded fast fashion industry. So we sold the business. And set up HemingwayDesign, which has a strapline which is about design is about improving things that matter in life, and that we're a B Corp. If you don't know what a B Corp is, it's worth looking it up. It means that everything that we do, we have to have societal benefit. And we were lucky enough to have sold Red or Dead for enough money for us to never have to worry about money again, and to concentrate then on doing design that had that would benefit society. And we do all sorts of things that I think are relevant to you. We're mainly urban designers, but as part of urban design, whilst we design town centres, whilst we do public realm and design parks and landscape, the main thing that we do is called placemaking. You can design amazing buildings. You can bring in the best architects to work with you in the world. And if you don't get the content right, if you don't get how that fits in a place and what it means to a place, then it fails. You've got one fairly local to here in West Brom, famously, with the Millennial Project that Will Alsop designed. And if something doesn't resonate with the community, with stakeholders and with funders, then it fails. Simple as that, time and time again. Art doesn't work, making doesn't work, architecture doesn't work if it's meaningless. Or even if it's got part meaning, it has to be totally immersed in the meaning of a place. And nothing that we ever do does not mean something. And if there's one thing that I talk about today, it'll be, without saying that word 100 times, it'll be about, hopefully you'll get why the things that we do are completely and utterly sustainable for the long term. It's very rare that we do a project that doesn't stick around for well over a decade. I can't think of anything in the last 15 years that doesn't still happen, and has faded away. And whether that's designing, whether that's urban design, whether it's designing a uniform for the National Portrait Gallery or designing a uniform for Transport for London, everybody on the Underground wears our uniforms, or whether it's designing a park, they all go from strength to strength, and that's because they're not based in the heads of Hemingway Design. They're completely and utterly based in the place that they're for and the people that are going to use them. 100%. We often say that we're not designers, we're curators. Anybody can design. Everybody has got ideas, and our job is to curate those ideas and bring them out. And that slide is just basically just about everything we do involves making within what we do. First of all, I want to talk about Blackburn is Open. So Blackburn is a town that I was brought up in from the age of 8 till I left for London when I was 18 in 1979. And Blackburn made me. Blackburn is a town not massively dissimilar to here. And what's the population of Walsall?
250,000. 250,000.
Wow, you're double the size of Blackburn, roughly double, 1.75 times the size of Blackburn. And Blackburn was going through a terrible stage in its history. It had obviously had the textile carpet pulled from underneath it as we lost the textile manufacturing to the Far East, sold all the machines back to the Far East. It had imported a workforce mainly from Pakistan, making up around 38-39% of the population of Blackburn to work in the mills. That had all gone, obviously, but the people stayed, as they should. They were now British. The kids had been brought up, and Blackburn was their home. Urban design did something really, really stupid. It built something called the Barbara Castle Way, which was a very good MP, but a 4-lane motorway that split the Asian Whalley Range, it's called, same as the Whalley Range in Manchester. So the Asian area of brilliant restaurants, interesting shops, always exotic and exciting to me and my friends. It built a 4-lane motorway between, in the name of progress, between the Blackburn town centre and Whalley Range. So Asian community on one side, the town centre on the other. What did the Asian community do? Which they did the right thing, is they thought, they probably wouldn't have said words like that, but they built their own town centre and created their own shopping on that side of the road. Why would you want to cross a 4-lane motorway? So Blackburn town centre lost 38% of its business. That's kind of a rough thing. And these are the kind of things you have to think about as urban designers, as creative people. How do you solve that? So the town centre went down, 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 down. When you lose 38% at a time when, at the start of town, this was post-2008 when the crash happened, and that town centre decline in this country started before 2008, but accelerated in 2000. Obviously, it started as the internet got bigger and bigger, and as people's shopping habits changed, and as stupid towns built out of town shopping, and all of those things that come together as a smorgasbord of disaster. And then they build a 4-lane motorway to add to all of that. So how do we solve this problem of Blackburn losing 38% of its population, of its shopping? Also, 38% of people, not everybody, but who were creating the diversity and the excitement of what Blackburn Town Centre was before that. So anyway, what happened very quickly was streets that were some streets became completely and utterly just empty. One of them, Town Hall Street, runs between the Town Hall, King George's Hall, where I was lucky enough to see David Bowie in '73. And so this amazing street of independent shops went totally and utterly up, just empty. And so the council came to us as designers, said, Wayne, you're from this town. Would HemingwayDesign be interested in creating something on the street? And what they suggested, could you do a graphic wrap of all of these shops to show the history of Blackburn so it doesn't look like town centre blight? And we just said, why would you want to do that? Number one, we're not great believers in just talking about history. You have to look forward. Number two, what the hell is a graphic wrap going to do for the front of a shop? Towns are doing that everywhere. Does that change a town centre's fortunes? Does it? It's no chance of doing that. Why would it? It just says, that's shut up. We'll put a nice pretty picture on the front because we can't think of anything else to do with it. So the first thing we did is says, right, okay, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a town that has got a proud history of making, where 38% of the population came here to make things, to work with the mill owners to make things, and something's gone awry here, and said, so the first thing we do is what can we talk about that's meaningful to everybody, to the 38% of people who came here, and to the rest of the population. We said it's making. We've got to do something about making. So we said, right, why don't we came up with this phrase, performance making. We said, why don't we fill every single one of these shops with people making things in the window so that it became a street that you visit to see what the DNA of the town is and to remind people and new generations. And we said that will cut across everybody. And it might bring the 38% back across the road if we're a bit lucky on this. So they said, yeah, well, that's fine, but will these people be able to pay? We said, what? You've got to give it to them free. You bought most of these shops up. They're sat there empty. Said, we can't do that. It's illegal. At the time, you couldn't. We said, well, just do it. What they're going to do? Are they going to arrest the leader of the? Is the government going to arrest the leader of the council? This was 2010. I think Cameron had just got in. I said, what are they going to come up the motorway and say you can't give these shops to young makers? Just think what that's going to do to them. So we had a Labour MP, and we went to her and we said, come on now, will you stand up for this in Parliament when they say that we're going to give these shops to people for free rate, free rents, and you're not going to collect, because you're not getting any rates now for it. And she said, well, you know that we'd have to pay rates. I said, no, just refuse to pay it because you're doing it for the right reasons. And so we did it and we opened. We called it Blackburn is Open, and within, I'd say 8 weeks, that street was thronging with people. We only opened Thursday, Friday. We're only sensible. Only opened Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And it became a place where families would come and, in Lancashire phrase, gawp at what was going on in the window. We had a jewellery maker, we had a chocolate maker, somebody making bikes from old bike parts, 2 students who got a T-shirt press out of Blackburn College, put that in the window, and they were all doing this stuff in the window. And behind it, you could go and buy the stuff. It just took off. It was crazy. The next thing was, on the back of that, we got really good publicity, and there was a building at the corner of the street, an old Barclays Bank, I think it was, quite a big old bank. And we said, right, why don't we buy that? We said to the council, why don't we buy that, create the first making rooms outside. The only making room that was existing in the UK was in Manchester. So the first making room outside of Manchester. Let's do it in little old Blackburn, and let's create. So we came up with this idea of ground floor, having 3D printers for schools and everything, and get a bit of money from the education department. First floor, to celebrate the textile industry, would be all overlocking machines and stuff which you can't have in your house, so that people could come and finish their clothing off the top floor. It was trendy at the time, a men's shed. So you'd have all of the stuff, like a router, so you could fix a doll's house or make a chair and all that kind of stuff. And went to the Arts Council. We got it fully funded, £375,000 to buy the building, to set it up, because it was meaningful. We could show that we'd set the precedent on the street next to it. This was talking about Blackburn. This was hitting diversity. This was potentially bringing communities together. Bought it. Next thing we did is we said, right, okay, we're onto something here. It was busy from day one. All the schools started to use it. Within a year, I think it started to open artists and makers, co-working labs. It bought the building next door because it was so successful. It's got 2 buildings now. And then we knew that we were onto something. So we said, right, okay, what can we do that's going to absolutely, so Blackburn owns making? There was a chance here for Blackburn, because there was nowhere else doing anything of this scale. This was in 2010, 2011. And we said, right, let's try and do something that Blackburn, that feels like it can never be taken away from Blackburn. And this is where meaningful is, and when, this is where meanwhile becomes worthwhile, becomes, we try not to use meanwhile. We try to use meaningful, because there's too much meanwhile that just, town centres do meanwhile all over, but we just want to do meaningful. So we said, what could we do here? So it's very simple. On my school jacket, I'd always remembered it said by skill and hard work in Latin, and on Blackburn Rovers, my beloved Blackburn Rovers shirt, says the same. Above the town hall, it says it's arte labore, by skill and hard work. It said the same. I said, so why can't we do something here that recognises that this town just does skillful things and by hard work? And we said, but we have to prove it. We have to prove that this is the town and no other. So we did a really simple thing. We went on the national statistics, and we said, let's see how many people really do work in manufacturing here. And we looked, and it was 19.8% of the population work in manufacturing. We thought, hell, that seems really high. So then we looked at everywhere else, and suddenly we were seeing London 7%, Manchester 7.5%, Birmingham 8%. We're thinking, it can't be this can't be this level of disparity, can it? And in the end, it's number one by quite a considerable way. The next one below it is 2 percentage points below it, and that's Skelmersdale, which is not a million miles from Blackburn. But basically, Blackburn has the highest proportion of people who get up in the morning and go to work and make things. That gave us the license to think, we've got something here. And we started the National Festival of Making. From day one, we didn't call it the Festival of Making. It's the National Festival of Making. Where else would you hold a National Festival of Making? This is the making town. We were able to take that, register it. It's quite funny, really, because within 18 months, a borough, I'm not going to say which borough of London, did something called the Festival of Making. We stopped them. A second town, which I won't say where it is, did the Festival of Making. They can call them other things. You can call them making fairs, but you can never call anything the Festival of Making, because Blackburn own it. Simple as that. And they own it because they deserve to own it, because it's meaningful and it's true. And when you do that, it makes it really, really easy. The Festival of Making is a massive success. It's been going for a long, long time now. It's a decade old. The next one is on the 6th and 7th of July. It takes place all year round. It's an NPO. It was Blackburn's first NPO. The amazing thing is that the spin-offs from it as well, there's definitely 3 NPOs. It might be 4 now. And other things have spun out. As a result, it's given so much confidence. Have a look at the art of manufacturing, which is an amazing thing in its own right, which takes place all year round and then comes to this. Have a look at the Textile Biennale, which again takes place all year round, has its own standalone, but comes to this. everybody takes part in it. The schools, the kids come. The kids come and they've made samosas, and it's amazing what happens when you do this. We even have schools and school kids being able to bring food that they've made in Tupperware from home and from school, and empty it out onto a stall and sell it without any health and safety, without any certificates, anything, because the success of it all and the feel-good factor of everything allows everything to break. And there are 60,000 people come out in the street since it's basket case to town. There are 8 within the first 2 years of Blackburn, the Festival of Making, the National Festival of Making starting. 8 bars were open. TV off of the Sewing Bee, the presenter of the Sewing Bee, has taken an old factory in Blackburn and makes his brand Community Clothing in Blackburn. Every week, there's never rare that any week where there's not a whole series of Google alerts to say that reference the Festival of Making and reference something else that is happening. For the council, it is you don't have to have some logo or anything like that. Like yesterday, I got George Clark contacting me off, Amazing Spaces. The year before. That's it, yeah. He came up, and it's constant. It's just all the time because it means something. Rest my case on that. But it's. And I mean, these are all things that have a look at it, and have a look at the art in manufacturing. I'm not going to spend time about that, but have a look at that link between art and manufacturing and how and what it's achieving. It's a standalone. It'll have a standalone website, the Art in Manufacturing. This is the festival of thrift. So this started before the Festival of Making. This is now 12 years old, bigger than the Festival of Making, and this is a festival that we were working in the Tees Valley with the Tees Valley Combined Authority, and we were talking about what can we do that will create national noise, and we were working on some town centre regeneration, and they were saying, should we do a sculpture? Should we do something like the Angel of the North? And we said, well, you've got to strike it very lucky to do that. The Angel of the North, how many can you name? There's been lots of artworks, big pieces of public art done in Britain, and there's probably only in the last 15 years, well, that's older than 15 years, isn't it, the Angel of the North? But in the last 20 years, you can name on the fingers of one hand how many of them have kind of defined a place. Probably, you've got those horses, the Kelpie horses in Dundee. There's very few of them that have ever done this. So he said, no, art is too hit and miss. And they said, well, what about could we do some big gallery that defines a place? And again, it's very similar to you could argue to an extent that the Turner Contemporary in Margate partially defines it, but maybe it's Dreamland that defines it more in Margate. It's often things that are more about public celebration and the public getting together and having a laugh and fun and joyous occasions with your family that often create a reason to go and visit somewhere and to love somewhere. And it's important that love comes into anything to do with regeneration. we always say at Hemingway Design, what are people going to love about this? What is it? What's going to warm? That whole thing about yes, things have got to be beautiful, but really it's about loving something and feeling that warmth about something that people can, with human values that people can warm to. So we looked at the Northeast and what the DNA of it was, and the DNA of the Tees Valley, it's got the lowest deprivation indices. There's parts of the East Coast that have lots further down the East Coast, which I'll talk about in a bit, which have got similar. But as a region, the Tees Valley is pretty deprived, much more than this area. But they prided themselves on thrift. It was a word that was used all the time, and so we said let's just do the National Festival of Thrift, but make it Britain's National Festival of Sustainability. And again, I urge you to look at, it's been going for 12 years. It's an NPO. It spends 3 years in a town, moves to another town within the Tees Valley, moves to another town, does its job, takes over buildings, leaves a legacy. But all the time, it's got a strong DNA that people know what it's about. And this can work, and this can also work working with the private sector. So Urban Village Fete, which is the next one's in month and a half. Yeah, is that 20th of May? No, that's the 18th, that one. Next one is in about the 14th of May of this. It's coming up anyway. And that's something we've been doing for, it's the 10th anniversary of it this year. So there's a pattern with all of this. All of these are 10 years and more. If we've started them more than 10 years ago, they're all still going. We've not done anything that's ever stopped, which is unusual, isn't it? Really unusual. But it's all to do with meaning. So why does this mean? This is for a big Chinese developer called Night Dragon, and it's at the Greenwich Peninsula, which is a part of London that was only ever known for the O2 and was a big chunk of post-industrial land, and where they're building 30,000 homes, so population will be 75,000 people will live on the Greenwich Peninsula, and to make it, you've got to make something meaningful for people to want to live there. You've got a lot of choices of places to go and where there's new developments in London and around London. And so what we did is we came up with this concept of what would an urban village fete, what is the equivalent of Splat the Rat? What is the equivalent of a folk of maypole dancing? And everything revolves around that. We take the village fete and we add art, design, making to that. But more than that, everything is participatory within it. And again, I'll run out of time if I keep going on about it. But if you want to look at a festival that means something, then and the reason why it stays there is that. I mean, and it's just, it's about everything should resonate with the place that you're doing it. So here, for example, this is one of the most popular parts of the event, is that they want to sell flats. They've got a lot of flats to sell. So we will build like a film set flat and just start the drawing and even get real sofas and then just say, right, kids, you draw this flat and you design this flat and the cues just to come, and we can see it. It's just joy and all of that. It's all of that. Hopefully, you'll see that everything about it just feels joyous and about people doing things together. It helps that nearly every year, bar one, we've had bright sunshine. Obviously, that helps a lot. But everything is doing stuff. And allowing kids to get messy and taking away the health and safety to a level where obviously nobody's going to get hurt or the chances of getting a cut finger or something might be, but it's just stripping away so that people just have fun. this is an amazing story. So has anybody heard of We Invented the Weekend? It's only been going, this will be its the next one will be its third year. So we've been working, Media City. Media City is where the BBC moved a third of its workforce to Salford. It's near enough the 10th anniversary of people fully moving into there. And has anybody ever been to Media City? It can be quite a cold place, can't it? And feel, it never felt really part of Manchester it's Salford, but it never felt really part of Greater Manchester, and it never really felt part of Salford. It could feel, it's very easy for it to feel just, you see the big BBC and you see Dock 10 and you see the kind of Imperial War Museum, and it feels, I don't know, it just feels a bit distant. And a different part of HemingwayDesign was brought in to do what's called a place brand and to come up with a narrative and a set of values that it could start to live by in order to become the place that it wanted to become but hadn't become. For it to be a place of, when it was first designed, it was shown with loads of young people buzzing around, young and old buzzing around, with cafes all along the Manchester Ship Canal, with life everywhere. But really, unless it's a beautifully hot sunny day, which that's not kind of Salford weather, it's never really been like that. So we said one of the pillars of the vision was to be always on. And to be always on, you've got to be doing things. You've got to be doing things that people want to be there. Anyway, so we with this one there was no easy answer. It was a historic. Obviously, it was the historic docks. It was the Manchester docks that had imported the raw materials that would then go along the Ship Canal to Blackburn and to Burnley and to Rochdale and all those towns to be processed and then come back and be shipped abroad. And that was its main raison d'etre, and sugar and all those other things and all those bad things that happened and good things that happened, and so. But nothing was left. There's none of the old dock buildings. There's one or two cranes, but kind of not really. There's just very little of that history left. So we got everybody into a room on a number of occasions and said, look, what could we do here that would define this place, not just as a place where the BBC, because that was becoming, the BBC is a great brand, obviously, a world brand, and anybody would want the second largest BBC contingent to be part of, if somebody said the BBC were going to move to Walsall, you'd obviously snap their hand off. You would be daft not to. But it was becoming overpowering that people only thought of Media City as a place of the BBC. And that clearly, in a place as big as Salford and as big as Greater Manchester, is not the right thing. So we got people around. We said, look, come on, between us all, we got loads of people from the BBC, loads from Granada, loads from the Lowry, from all different places. We brought people together. And then one night we were sat, and this is what it takes. It takes a long time sometimes to do this. But one night there was a spark. We always get pizzas and drinks in and just sit around and discuss, because great ideas come out of getting a lot of great people in a room and talking. They don't come out of, we never do it. All of these things have not come out of my head that I'm talking about, or anybody's single head at HemingwayDesign. They come because we properly co-create with the people who know a place better than we do. We're good at co-creating and teasing things out. And this was the best thing we've ever teased out, I think. There was a guy from the BBC. I said, look, come on, what are you working on? What are you working on at the moment? There must be, is there anything? He said, yeah, I've just done Who Do You Think They Are with Sir Ian McKellen. So that's that programme that looks at the lineage. And he said his great-grandfather, a guy called Robert Lowes, in 1843, fought for workers' rights to have Saturdays off work. I said, oh, and it was sort of, I said, people didn't have Saturday off work anywhere at all until 1843. He said, no, everybody worked Saturday. I said, blooming heck, it doesn't seem that, because it doesn't seem that long ago, does it, when you think about it? And then I said, well, tell us a bit more about it. He said, well, he was an activist that fought for, it was the textile workers, and they were working in tough conditions. They got Sunday morning off to go to church, and that was it. But then he got the whole of Saturday. And then he said, do you know what? As soon as that happened, that was the reason why sport and football started to take place on Saturday afternoon, because all of the workers wanted to go. I said, oh my God, that's amazing. I said, so are you telling me that he kind of gave people the weekend? He said, yeah, as far as we know, that he's the one that gave people the weekend. So two of us just immediately said, this place invented the weekend. So the first thing we did is we had Salford University there and Manchester Met there. As I just said to them, tomorrow, can you please go through all the microfiches? Can you do research? Is this a fact? So they found it out. Robert Lowe's, this happened in 1843, Sir Ian McKellen's great-great-grandfather or whatever it was. And then we said, right, can you check around anywhere else in the UK? Did it definitely happen here first? Was this the place where people had Saturday? Yeah, there's nowhere else. In fact, the only place in the world that we can find is a Ford factory. Sir Henry Ford was 5 years later. So we put about a few grand into doing major research. And yes, in that exact spot at Media City, invented the weekend. Activism took place, which fits Greater Manchester perfectly, doesn't it? The worker bee and everything. And now, within the space of 3 years, we've created this festival is massive. 90,000 people in year 2. 90,000 people turned up to it. Because who wouldn't want to be involved with it? So we have pillars. Everything we get green to do with green issues and gardening. We play sport. We do this, we do that. Obviously, they're all these pillars of what, because everybody, even if you work, there's a different rhythm to the weekend. We all know that without the weekend, life would be, completely different and worse, absolutely worse. Even if you enjoy your work like me, I love Friday nights when those emails stop coming. I love that rhythm. I love that change. So here was something that might be, we said, is the weekend one of the top 10 brands in the world? Possibly. It's certainly more important than Nike. So when you've got an idea like that and something that's meaningful and rooted in place, it was really easy. We then just went out to businesses locally, Bupa are one, and said, look at this here. Would you like to be involved in? Because people get wellness at weekend is massive. Straight away, 100,000, no problem. Auto Trader, we went to Auto Trader. Well, you're selling loads of e-bikes. People get out on their bike at weekend. You sell caravans. People go camping at weekend, and people get in their car and go on holiday and visit their friends. Do all that. They clean their car. Of course, I'm not going to tell you what they sponsor, but it's absolutely enormous and way, way bigger than Bupa. And then it just goes on and on and on, because you can go to anybody. You can go to television and say, talk about this because it's the weekend. You can go to a cereal company and say, right, will you provide breakfast for everybody, because people have more time for breakfast at the weekend than they do when they're rushing. It's just everything. You can go and get a partnership with the Royal Horticultural Society, and everybody comes to this festival, and that's why there's 90,000 people there, because we dug out the meaning of the place. Simple, and again, just joyous with making at the heart of it. Again, but when people are doing things, we get people to say what does the weekend mean to them? What do they want at? All of those things, so they can make banners and they can do all sorts, because there's something that people just want to come and talk about, and it gives them something to talk about. probably the festival of our festivals that we started, the one that we go to as a family and enjoy ourselves the most. And the thing about this, I think, is there anybody from the council in here? Right. This is about bravery. This is about total and utter bravery. So, I might ask you after, has the council ever done anything as brave as what East Suffolk or Suffolk Council have done in Lowestoft? So Lowestoft is the second lowest deprivation of any place that we've ever worked in. It lost its mojo in a big way because it was totally reliant on the fishing industry, which it lost. It's only 70,000 people, but that's when 70,000 people haven't got jobs. It's pretty serious. We won a bid to come up with a vision and a master plan for the Lowestoft South Beach, and I remember when we first went there, which will have been in 2016. We couldn't believe this absolutely stunning beach, 2-level promenade with beautiful Victorian gardens, lovely architecture, sand dunes at one end, a white sandy beach. Why wasn't Lowestoft seen as this, certainly a better looking place than Bournemouth, and not, the southeast, it's the east, but it's not a million miles from tons of money, the money of Norfolk and the money of Suffolk, where all the artists and everything that lives there. What has gone on here? Why has this place been ignored? And we did there was a whole series of things that we proposed, but one of them was to create an event with meaning that would put Lowestoft on the map. So we said, forget about architecture. Before we do any public realm, we're doing loads of public realm now. Before you do anything else, let's get people here because intrinsically it's lovely. You don't need to do anything. This place has got it already. So we got people into hotel rooms on the front, into kind of hotel foyers in the front, talking, meeting with artists, with designers, with business people. And one thing came out in our third or fourth meeting. Somebody said, the main thing about living here for me is on Midsummer's Day, so the summer solstice, June the 21st, I go down at 10 to 4 in the morning with my dog, and I stand in that. She pointed out the window, it was down, and I stand on that spot on the beach over there. I said, oh dear. I said, why do you do that? She said, because I feel that I'm getting the first light to hit Britain when I stand there on the 21st of June. And I had no idea what she was talking about. Does anybody have an idea what that is in here? So, yeah, it's the summer solstice. But why on that point where furthest place east? Does anybody else here know that Lowestoft was the most easterly point in Britain? Did anybody know that? Neither did I. Where do you know that's one of the 4 points? Land's End, John O'Groats, the Lizard. How the hell have we not heard of Lowestoft? It's mad. Why do we know 3 and not the east coast, not the eastern one? There's a monument there for it to show, but for some reason nobody wanted to talk about Lowestoft. So we said, why don't we do a festival on the weekend of the summer, the closest weekend to the summer solstice, right on that spot on the beach, and everybody gathers here and celebrates the first light at 10 to 4 in the morning. And we went to the council and said, could we do a festival that starts at midday and finishes at midday the day after, that builds to the scale of our other festivals, so it could get 90,000 people? Well, no, the biggest we'd ever done then was 60. So it could get 60,000 people on this beach that normally only has 100 people on a busy day. And could they all camp in the sand dunes there? Because we can't expect them to come down at 10 to 4. We want them to be asleep if they want to have a break with their kids and get up and come and celebrate at 10. And they said yes. It's the only festival, it's a free festival. There are no barriers. It's a free festival. Official figures are 45,000. There's way more than that, as you would imagine, if you know. There's big stages, there's small stages. It takes place everywhere. It goes through the town. It goes all the way through the night. It now takes place, it starts earlier on the Saturday and doesn't finish till Sunday night, because those 24 hours, which were brilliant, just following a great concept. We couldn't cope with the numbers. People didn't want to go home. They didn't want to go home at 12 o'clock on a Sunday. And it's just joyous. All my kids, my grandkids, all of us, the whole team, we all try not to work at the festival, although that's impossible. Because all these events have their own teams. We set up a CIC, so Blackburn as a community interest company, Festival of Thrift, and then we sit on the board, and it's run. They're all run locally, but I stay. If it's not me, somebody else will stay on the board to make sure that the principles are maintained. And we usually deliver part of the festival. Here we deliver Dancing in the Dunes, so a small Balearic stage in the dunes, and we deliver Charity Supermarket, and we deliver 3 things at this festival. But so we probably won't be having no time off. Right, I'm going to finish off very quickly. Has anybody been to King's Cross in the last? In the last, and you've probably seen what's happened with Granary Square, Coal Drops Yard. Do you like it? It's probably the best regeneration in my lifetime in Britain. I don't think there's been anything quite of this quality. I know it's London, they've got money, but they could have done it in so many other ways. If you haven't been there, but they've been, as a developer, Argent have been brilliant. They allowed us to do the anchor tenant to be shelter, an anchor tenant to a shopping centre to be a charity shop. The story's on the HemingwayDesign website. That's bravery. To say this is the anchor tenant amongst Paul Smith, COS, Uniqlo, Universal Works, and lots of other posh labels, but the anchor tenant is shelter. And why? Work it out. The first activation, this was when it was just starting. The first activations were a market called The Drops that we did for them. And it was just designer makers. Everything starts with designer makers. It does. But it's having what this was about, the fact that this was The Drops, because this is where the coal was dropped down, and so the new collections have to be dropped every week. And there's also, but so there's meaning. It's not just any old maker's market. We did Sample in Greenwich Peninsula, started similarly. Second Sundays is proof that a council can do it, and it's not just down to developers. So Andover, we did the master plan, a vision, a master plan. And again, part of the master plan was to do a market that was so unlike their crappy market that they've got, that showed off the produce of the wider area. And they said it would never work. Well, 4 years, so they paid us to do it for a year with a view that we would pass it on to them. And after a year, it was so successful that they employed a full-time person within the council. It's now in its 4th year. It'll be around. There's no chance of it not being around in 10 years. That's become the de facto market of Andover now. So a council can do it and run it and own it. It doesn't need HemingwayDesign or the equivalent of it. And it's just the same as a HemingwayDesign event, and it's run by a council because they employed the right people, and they kept the standards up, and they kept the curatorial standards up, and they're willing to say no to somebody that wants to sell a burger that they bought from Costco, rather than doing things properly with provenance. And they're not afraid to say no to somebody who's selling shit. Simple as that. Because we should say no to people that sell shit. They can go and sell their shit somewhere else, but not as part of something that is trying to give a new meaning to a place. And that takes absolute bravery to be able to say that for a council. And and you have to look in the eyes of an elected member and say, it's actually rubbish to go and buy a burger from Costco and sell it to the public for 5 times what you bought it for. It's rubbish to do that. It's rubbish to go and buy a bun from Tesco when you've run out and sell that as street food. And people do it. And it's, so, all that takes bravery. I'm not going to go on about that. Charity supermarket's a really interesting concept. Charity supermarket is worth you looking at. That's something that we started. The idea of this was that charity shops were being much maligned. Has anybody heard of Charity Supermarket? A few of you. It's much maligned, charity shops, and a lot of elected members feel like it's the sign of retail, of a town centre going down. We know it isn't, and we've been testing. We know from trying things in King's Cross, and we do this thing in 2 weeks. 2 weeks today, it's the whole weekend, is this thing called Classic Car Boot Sale, which is ours, and we do that in King's Cross, and part of that has got a big charity section, and 20,000 people come to shop this charity section. And we knew the power, but we also knew the important thing is you have to understand and play to the most important markets. This is, again, a very difficult thing. And we're not afraid to say it, the least important market for a town to thrive is the grey pound. Now, that gets me in all sorts of trouble, but it's empirically proved. If you want a town centre to thrive, it has to be Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. Simple as that. They're the ones with the disposable income. They're the future. They will be the grey pound eventually. But if you don't get them now, you've not got them in the future. You have to bring them in. You have to get them off the internet. You have to get them from out of town shopping from the malls, and you have to get them into your town centre. Without that, the town centre is fucked. It's as simple as that. There's no question about it. There's no. It's not even an argument, because the figures are all there. When you look at the spend, which is measured, you look at the spend of who spends what. The grey pound is the least important, and so you can't pander to that, which a lot of towns do. So we were having people saying, all these charity shops, and mainly older people, saying all these charity shops, it just makes our town look really, really bad. Whereas the younger generation was saying, no, we love shopping in charity shops. We either wear for ourselves, or we buy some stuff and stick it on Depop or Vinted and make a bit of side hustle on it. So we did this big pop-up, and it was really, really successful. And the owner of a shopping centre, the owner of Brent Cross Shopping Centre, which is one of the original big shopping centres in London, said, my daughters went to this and they absolutely loved it, and they've suggested that we stick it in Brent Cross, and we've got this big old Topshop, Topman and Miss Selfridge together, 20,000 square foot. So that's the whole, that's like 3 floors of this building put together. It's enormous. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't stand Philip Green. How good is this to be able to put this into, they'd gone bankrupt, obviously. And so within 4 weeks, we got all the charities together. We came up with the name Charity Supermarket. We did the brand. HemingwayDesign's team did the brand. I put 40 grand into it, said, right, let's just get this thing open. And the aim was to get that 40 grand back. We took £375,000 in 4 weeks. We were all over the press. There was coach parties coming from, furthest one I know that came was from Sheffield. We built up a following within that space of time, on 20,000 people on social media. It was like within 4 weeks. This was crazy. And since then, we've raised, the full story of it is online and how we raised the money, but we've raised 3.75 million for charity in 26 months. Imagine that. That's more than corporates rate. That's way more than big corporates give to charity. We've done that from a little startup. Again, it's a community interest company. We don't take any money from it. And at the moment, we've got 8 shops open, from Glasgow to Reading to London to all over the place. Brighton. We've had 20 odd shops, and we're popping up at festivals and events all around the UK this summer. We employ 30 young millennials, young Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, and just taken on a big warehouse with sorting facilities. We've got 50 charities, all the big charities, and lots of local ones are involved in it. We're desperate. We'd never been in the Midlands. We're desperate to go. We'd have to go in Birmingham first, and I think that's it.
Hey.
Is it now?